Hey, welcome to This Week in Search. My name is Matt Coffy, and today we're going to cover the things that happened in the search marketing arena over the last couple of weeks. So getting right to it, the big news back a few weeks ago was the June 16th update, and that was a core algorithm update. There wasn't a real name for it. I don't think it was really meant to be something that was as prominent as a penguin or a panda or any of the major search engine updates that Google's done. But we certainly did feel 3 or 4 days of earthquake, and a lot of people have come out to say that that was the initial testing potentially of the new panda that's coming through. It might have been an initial testing of some sort of algorithm. I don't think it was necessarily a panda or penguin or any update that would have been so-called named. What I do think it was a database that was installed that ran and just kind of cleaned up things. Because what we noticed was that in all the core fluctuations that we found across all of the customers that we work with is that it really didn't last too long. It was just a couple of days and then it cleaned itself up and kind of moved along. So I don't think it was really that big of a deal. A lot of people also are kind of correlating it to maybe an HTTPS update, because at the same time Wikipedia went from HTTP to HTTPS, and they had a huge change in the fluctuation of where they were ranked because of that security change. So a lot of people are thinking that maybe because of that change it had some sort of algorithmic effect across the pond. I really think that it was just a core update to the Google algorithm, not a real big thing. But what's more interesting, and this is something that we found just recently, so July 1st, we did see some movement, and that movement's kind of stayed where it sat. So I think we're starting to see actually initial rollouts of a panda coming. And when I mean panda, that's a sort of a quality algorithm. So it's going through the back end of these sites and saying, hey, if there's stuff that needs to be fixed, then you should have fixed it by now. And if you have sort of crappy links or things that shouldn't have been on your back end of your website, you should think about really getting them going by now, because they're going to run it within the next 2 weeks, and I think they're testing it out. We did see sort of I would say a tumble over the weekend of rankings. They did come back today, which is July 6th, but we do think, and I do think, that the general consensus is that maybe this Friday might be the time when they roll out the panda. So be prepared for that. If you have some challenged links or spammy links to your site, this is the time to see if you can get them removed. So one of the things I would like to mention is what I found very interesting, which is another part of sort of Google's transition here into other spaces, is to see actually Yahoo having Google results. Now, we've seen this a couple of times in the past, but now it's getting more prominent. They signed a deal with, Google has a deal with any of these search partners, and Yahoo is a partner for Google. So they're testing out whether or not the search results are better with Google being encompassed within the Yahoo framework. Now, there's a 51% sort of stakeholder line that Bing has to be 51% showed in the results. But what's interesting is you start to think and put two things together, and there's even some possible thought that there might be some of Google's management moving over to help Yahoo become more prevalent with their search results. Obviously, it all comes down to money, and there's even been some triads out there that maybe even Matt Cutts might be moving over to Yahoo to run their search. This is all sort of, I guess you could say, a popularity contest at the end of the day. How can you make which search engines become more popular? Yahoo's been fading ever since the dawn of Google, but I think at the end of the day, Safari, as it sort of maybe becomes more prevalent in some of the more Apple devices and people start to use it more, and some of the other search engines that are coming up maybe have a bite into Google, and then see Google start to try and engrave themselves into more and more search platforms. But, however, of course, we saw last week that now AOL has dumped Google, and they dumped Google for Bing. Now, that might have just been sort of a relationship that's ending, but a 10-year relationship with Bing, that's what they got out of the deal for AOL. So I think that really puts some sort of, I guess, meat on the table for Google to explore other relationships other than its own. So that's an interesting part of how we see the sort of search engine world start to take hold. So what else has gone on in this week? We saw Google Webmaster Tools now have a very helpful sort of box that you can drop down, and Google Webmaster Tools has become quite an amazing little animal over the last couple of months as they've done some upgrades. But the one thing they did now is they've made a very friendly user box to sort of initiate questions and have sort of a helpful hint strategy on how to get your site to perform better. So a lot of these things are pointing towards Google trying to make it more friendly for people to use tools like Webmaster Tools. And this is pulling away from the standard SEO tools that are out there. I wouldn't be surprised if they're heading towards sort of a paid matrix where they will give people some updated features if they went to a paid platform within the Webmaster strategy. One last thing that we wanted to talk about is this suppression versus penalization. We've had a lot of clients who come to us and say, hey, my site's been penalized and I can't figure out what to do. What should I do to solve the problem? Should I put in a disavow link? I mean, there's so many things you could do to solve these problems, but putting in the disavow is the last thing we recommend. I think what I see mainly is that a lot of this long-term poor linking structures, a lot of people have gone offshore to India or wherever to purchase inexpensive links that have been sort of toxic. And over the period of time, Google sort of penalized their site and suppressed the rankings. And what ends up happening is these sites seem to get flagged in the system, and no matter what you do to try and get them to be ranked higher, nothing helps. And that you can, try and put in a reconciliation request or, something into Google to say, hey, I can't figure out, but nothing seems to work. There's just not enough oomph under the fire of trying to get a request in unless you're a big brand. So, the answer is typically to go get another domain and try and rank it. And I think that's sort of what some people are coming to the conclusion is that, if you've done stuff in the past to your site and it's been flagged, long term, you just don't know whether that site's ever going to be able to come back to where it would be because you don't know what type of penalties or flags have been associated with it, with Google's suppression. And we see this constantly, and so I've suggested to several other accounts that we work with, hey, just have your plan B started and get another website ranking. If it comes up to be #1, then you've done your job, or first page, and you've gotten above your old rankings, then you're on your way. And sometimes those suppressions get lifted, but sometimes they never do. So you have to be careful. If you're just not finding any way with getting your site ranked over a period of like years and years and years, it's just not coming up because things have happened in the past, get your plan B started. Anyways, hope you enjoyed this version of This Week in Search. We'll see you next week.